Chapter 1. The Arrest. The galaxy was vast, a sprawling tapestry of stars and uncharted realms, where empires clashed, worlds burned, and the shadows of war stretched over countless planets. In this grand cosmic play, there were heroes and villains, but none so feared, so elusive, as the figure known only in whispers, Vargas the Silent. On the world of Janor, a planet known for its lush green jungles and towering spires of shimmering glass, the Galactic Empire held sway. The Empire, vast and unyielding, had colonized countless planets, bringing order, discipline, and control to an otherwise chaotic universe. They had everything under control. Or so they thought. It was an ordinary evening on Janor, a planet known for its peaceful society of scholars and scientists. They were gathered at the Imperial Fortress for a lecture on the latest breakthrough in genetic engineering, a cure for cancer. The scientists, though esteemed in their fields, knew that their research could change the course of galactic history. What they didn't know was that a storm was brewing just outside the fortress, and it was about to sweep them into a darker conflict than they could ever imagine. In the shadows of the fortress, the rumble of distant engines echoed through the halls, unnoticed by most. Yet, there was one individual whose every step was calculated, whose every movement was a methodical act of preparation. A soldier, clad in the black armor of the Galactic Empire, walked briskly through the halls, a flash of steel in the dim light. He wasn't just another Imperial soldier. He was a special operative, a man known for his ruthless efficiency. His name was Commander Zeros. Behind him, an Imperial officer scrambled to keep up, fumbling with his datapad, as if unsure of the situation at hand. "Sir, we've just intercepted a communication," the officer stammered, sweat dripping down his brow. "There's a human soldier being transported here. They say he's—" "Enough," Commander Zero snapped. "I know who it is. I've been briefed." The officer paled, and he instinctively took a step back. "Sir, but he's not one of ours." The report said, "He's a fugitive, a hitman, a human." Zeros's lip curled into a cold, predatory smile. "Doesn't matter. He's in our custody now." Chapter 2. The hitman's past. Vargas had never been like the others. A product of a broken Earth, he was one of the last survivors of an ancient human society that had once ruled a tiny corner of the galaxy. But unlike most humans, who lived in peaceful cities on Earth's dying surface, Vargas had chosen a darker path, one that led him into the shadowy corners of the Empire's underworld. He was the best at what he did, eliminating targets with precision, stealth, and brutal efficiency. It was said that he could strike without ever leaving a trace, his hands drenched in the blood of those who had crossed the wrong people. But what the Galactic Empire didn't know, what no one truly understood, was that he wasn't just a soldier or a killer. He was something more. Vargas had learned long ago to blend in, to be a ghost in the storm of galactic warfare. For years, he had worked for the highest bidder, taking down leaders, mercenaries, and even entire factions. No one had ever seen his face. He had no need for recognition, only the satisfaction of his work. But now, as he stood shackled in an Imperial transport ship, being dragged through the vastness of the galaxy, he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission, this capture, was different. There was something more to it, something darker. Chapter 3. The Shock. Vargas sat motionless, his dark eyes locked onto the cold steel floor beneath him, calculating, thinking, waiting. He knew the Imperial forces would come for him soon, as they always did. But the question remained, why had they targeted him this time? He had no memory of crossing any major factions recently. Perhaps the Empire had finally taken notice of his work, or perhaps it was a simple mistake. But nothing ever happened by accident. His thoughts were interrupted when the transport's doors slammed open, revealing the cold, harsh light of the Imperial prison. Several armed guards stood at attention, and Commander Zeros was there, his dark eyes glinting with cold, calculating intent. "Vargas," Zero said, his voice low and menacing. "The Empire has a use for someone like you." Vargas raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The last thing he wanted was to play into the hands of his captors, but he could feel the tension building. He could sense the power of the Empire around him, and the fear that lurked just beneath its surface. There was something happening, something in the works that was far bigger than the usual political power plays. Chapter 4. The Discovery. As they dragged him through the corridors of the fortress, Vargas couldn't help but notice the strange atmosphere that seemed to pervade every corner of the facility. The Empire had always been rigid, efficient, but now there was something unsettling in the air. It was in the whispers he overheard, the hurried conversations between scientists, and the strange sense of urgency that seemed to infect the higher-ups. Everyone was on edge. Something was about to happen. Something big. "Let him sit here," Zeros ordered as they arrived at a dimly lit room filled with old, dusty research equipment. "I'll notify the Imperials about his interrogation." As the guards left, Vargas remained seated, eyes scanning the room. His sharp mind was already working. The lights flickered overhead, and he could hear the soft hum of distant machinery. He wasn't sure how long he would have before his captors returned, but it would not matter. He had been in worse situations. He had escaped from worse prisons. Chapter 5. The Twist. As the door opened again, Vargas wasn't surprised to see not one, but 3 figures enter the room. 2 of them were Imperial officers, the usual sterile, clean-cut faces of the regime. But the third was something else, a figure that stood out in stark contrast to the rigidity of the Empire. A woman, dressed in an ancient flowing robe, her face obscured by a dark veil. She approached him with a quiet, measured step, and for the first time, Vargas felt something stir deep inside him, an uneasy sense of recognition. This was no ordinary Imperial officer. "Vargas," she said, her voice soft but carrying a strange, hypnotic weight. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into. The galaxy is changing, and you, human, may be the key to unlocking a future we can barely comprehend." Vargas narrowed his eyes, leaning forward. "What do you mean?" The woman smiled, a thin, cryptic smile. "The cure for cancer is just the beginning. We are on the verge of discovering a power that could heal not just your species, but all species. The Galactic Empire plans to use it to reshape everything. And you, Vargas, are going to help us make that happen." The room went silent. The air was thick with tension. And just like that, everything Vargas thought he knew was turned upside down. Chapter 6. Unraveling Secrets. Vargas leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. The woman's words lingered in the air, unsettling him in ways he hadn't expected. He had always operated in the shadows, knowing how to strike fast, hard, and with deadly precision. But now, standing on the edge of something far larger than himself, he wasn't sure what to make of the situation. The woman in the veil remained silent, her presence heavy and imposing. Her eyes, barely visible under the dark fabric, seemed to pierce into him, reading him like an open book. But Vargas wasn't easily read. His past was buried in shadows, his identity wrapped in layers of deceit and manipulation. "I don't work for anyone," he muttered, eyes flickering toward the door. "And I certainly don't work for the Empire." The woman smiled again, a knowing smile. "You don't have a choice now, Vargas. The Empire has already marked you. You're a weapon, a tool. You might not like it, but this is bigger than you, bigger than anyone. And we need you." Her words hung in the air like a trap being set, and Vargas could almost feel the weight of them crushing down on him. He'd been through too much to let his guard down, but something about her tone, her calmness, made him pause. There was a deeper game being played, and he had no idea what role he was supposed to fill in it. "You think I'll just join your side?" Vargas shot back, standing up slowly. his muscles coiling like a predator ready to spring. "You don't know what I've done." "We know everything," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "Your reputation precedes you, Vargas. But you're not the only one with blood on their hands. The Empire is ready to use you. The question is, will you let them?" Vargas's eyes narrowed. He could feel the stirrings of something deep within him. An instinct, a drive that had kept him alive in situations far more dire than this. The pull of revenge, the taste of power, was strong. But there was something even stronger at play here. Something that he couldn't quite place. The woman, sensing his hesitation, stepped closer. "We can offer you something the Empire cannot. A chance to heal the galaxy's wounds, to cure what was thought incurable." Vargas had seen the Empire's promises before. They were lies wrapped in silver-tongued words, but something about the way she spoke, with conviction, made him wonder if there was more to her proposal than he realized. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. "Because," she said, her eyes burning with intensity, "you're the only one who can do it." Chapter 7. The Empire's Agenda. Back in the heart of the Imperial Fortress, Commander Zeros paced in the war room, his thoughts a whirlwind of strategy and uncertainty. He'd been given a simple mission: capture the human soldier, but the woman's sudden involvement had thrown everything into disarray. "Sir," a lieutenant interrupted, entering the room with a crisp salute. "The human soldier is in our custody, but there's a complication. The medical research team just completed their preliminary scans, and, well, they've found something." Zeros raised an eyebrow, motioning for the lieutenant to continue. "His blood." The lieutenant hesitated. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's like a map, a blueprint of human genetics that we've never encountered before. There's something in him, something we don't understand. He may be integral to the project." "Which project?" Zeros asked, narrowing his gaze. "The one that the High Command has been developing for the past decade," the lieutenant replied. "The one that could reshape the galaxy's future." Zeros felt the weight of those words crash down on him. He had heard rumors, whispers about an ancient power buried deep within the human genome. A cure that could alter not just the fate of a single species, but of entire galaxies. But he hadn't believed them. Now, with Vargas in custody, it seemed those rumors were closer to truth than he had ever imagined. Chapter 8. Secrets of the Cure. The woman in the veil, whose name Vargas still hadn't learned, was not alone when she returned to the holding chamber. She was accompanied by two scientists, their faces hidden behind holographic visors, their hands heavy with data pads. Vargas could feel the tension thickening in the room, the weight of their intent pressing down on him. "Let me show you what we've discovered," the woman said, motioning to the scientists. One of them stepped forward, the holographic visor flashing as it brought up a detailed schematic of a human cell. "Your DNA, Vargas," the scientist began. "It's not ordinary. There's a modification hidden in your genes. A series of sequences that we've never seen in any human before. It's almost as if someone has been tampering with your biology for centuries." Vargas blinked, his heart rate quickening. He had always known there was something different about him, something that had set him apart from others. He had never questioned it. "Who did this to me?" he demanded, a growl in his voice. The woman stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "That's the key, Vargas. The human race was genetically altered long ago, long before the Empire ever set its sights on this galaxy. The cure for cancer is just a fragment of what's locked in your DNA. What we need you to unlock is far greater. We need you to help us harness this power." Vargas's mind raced. Cancer. The cure. But this? This was something else. Something far beyond his understanding. But the pull of it, the promise of power and the chance to avenge every wrong ever committed against him, was undeniable. I don't care about your cure, Vargas spat. I care about getting out of here alive. The woman's smile remained serene, almost knowing. You will, in time. But first, we need to know what's hidden in your genes. Only you can access it. And if you refuse, the Empire will make sure you never leave this fortress alive. Chapter 9. Escape and Betrayal. Vargas knew he had no choice. He was too deep in this web now, and the more he fought, the tighter it would become. But even as he agreed to help, a small part of him plotted, waited for the right moment. Later that night, as the moonlight filtered through the prison's narrow windows, Vargas saw his chance. The guards were distracted, a shift change underway. The woman in the veil had gone to attend to important matters, leaving him alone for a moment in his cell. He reached into his boot, pulling out a small concealed blade. A weapon he had hidden from the Empire since the moment he was captured. A flash of steel, and the lock on his cell clicked open. Vargas moved silently through the halls, his instincts kicking in. But as he approached the exit, he froze. The woman stood at the end of the corridor, her expression unreadable. You didn't think you could escape that easily, did you? She asked, her voice cold. Vargas's eyes narrowed. You knew I'd try. I know you better than you think, she said. And I know what you'll do next. But escaping won't save you. In the end, we all have our roles to play. Even you, Vargas. The blade in his hand felt heavier than ever before. He was trapped, and the choices before him now would either lead to his freedom or damnation. Chapter 10. The Turning Point. Vargas took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman in the veil had underestimated him, just as everyone else always did. But this time, he was prepared to play their game and win. He had his own plans now, plans that no one could predict. The real question was, which side would he ultimately choose? The woman's cryptic warnings echoed in his mind, but Vargas was no pawn. He was a killer, a shadow in the night, and the galaxy. The galaxy was about to learn that even the most powerful empire couldn't control what it didn't understand. Chapter 11. The Heart of Darkness. Vargas's feet were silent against the cold stone floor as he moved through the labyrinthine halls of the Imperial Fortress. His senses were sharpened, his every muscle taut with anticipation. The woman in the veil was close behind him, her soft footsteps eerily quiet. There was no doubt that she had expected this. She had known he would try to escape. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Vargas wasn't running. Not anymore. He was playing them. For years, he had been a ghost, a tool in the hands of powerful people. But now, with the dark secrets of his blood and the power he had yet to fully understand, Vargas was on the edge of something much greater than survival. The Empire had underestimated him, and the mysterious woman had too. As he rounded a corner, the dim lighting flickered for a moment, and Vargas's eyes locked onto a familiar face. Commander Zeros, he said, his voice cold, deadly. Zeros stood at the end of the hallway, flanked by two elite soldiers. His stern face broke into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You didn't really think you could escape, did you, Vargas? His voice was laced with menace. You're too valuable to let go. The Empire has plans for you. Vargas didn't flinch. He had heard it all before. Plans, prophecies, emperors claiming to know his fate. But none of it had ever mattered. His fate had always been his own. And now, that destiny was intertwined with something far more dangerous. Something that could tear apart the galaxy itself. I'm not going to be your pawn anymore, Vargas said, his hand tightening on the blade he had concealed in his cloak. You're all being manipulated. Zeros's smile faded, and he motioned for the soldiers to step forward. The tension in the air crackled like static. You think you understand the game, Vargas? You think you're in control? Zeros said, his voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you're up against. The Empire is about to become unstoppable. And you— He pointed toward Vargas, his eyes narrowing with cold fury. "You're going to help us unlock its full potential." Vargas's eyes glinted with a fierce determination. He wasn't just going to escape the Empire. He was going to destroy it. And the first step was learning the full truth about the power within him. "Not this time," Vargas said, as he darted forward in one fluid motion, slashing his blade with precision. One soldier fell, his body crumpling to the floor in a heap. The other hesitated, his eyes wide with fear, as Vargas moved like a shadow. Zeros, however, was not afraid. He raised his hand, and suddenly, a blinding blue light erupted from the walls, encasing the corridor in an electrified force field. Vargas stopped in his tracks, his blade still in his hand, his body vibrating with the energy surrounding him. "You can't escape this, Vargas," Zeros said, his voice colder than ice. "The field is powered by the very energy you've been carrying within you. Your bloodline, your DNA, the cure. We created this." Vargas's heart raced as the reality of Zeros's words hit him like a punch to the gut. The Empire had not just captured him. They had engineered him. His blood, his very essence, was the key to something much darker, much more dangerous. "You were never just a soldier," Zeros continued, his voice filled with dark satisfaction. "You were born to be a weapon, a living conduit to the power we need to reshape the galaxy." Vargas felt the weight of his own existence crash down on him. The Empire had been manipulating him all along, using him as the final piece of their twisted puzzle. He had always known there was something different about him, something buried deep inside. But now, as the electric field surged with power, Vargas realized the horrifying truth. His blood was the key to unlocking the Empire's ultimate weapon, and it was only a matter of time before they used him to bring the galaxy to its knees. Chapter 12. The Betrayal. Vargas was locked in place, the electric field humming around him, but his mind was racing. There had to be a way out. There had to be something he could do. As he looked up, his eyes met the woman in the veil once more. She was standing behind Zeros, her arms folded, watching him with an unreadable expression. There was no fear in her eyes, only cold calculation. "You don't get it, do you?" she said softly, her voice carrying over the hum of the field. "This isn't just about the Empire, the cure, the power inside you. It's something bigger than all of us, something that has been hidden from the galaxy for centuries. You're a piece of a much older puzzle, Vargas." Vargas's mind whirled as her words sank in. Older than the Empire. Older than the wars, the weapons, the factions. He had always known his past was shrouded in mystery. But now, the truth was unfolding before him in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. Before he could respond, the ground beneath his feet trembled, and the walls of the fortress began to shake violently. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. "What the hell is going on?" Zero shouted, his hand gripping his sidearm as the fortress quaked. The woman in the veil's expression shifted. For the first time, there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "It's begun." Vargas's heart skipped a beat. "What has begun?" "The real enemy," she whispered. "The ones who created the power inside you. The ones who have been watching from the shadows. They are coming, and the Empire will fall." Chapter 13. The Dark Truth. The ground shook harder now, and in the distance, a loud guttural roar reverberated through the fortress. It was a sound unlike anything Vargas had ever heard before. A primal, terrifying noise, as though the very foundations of the galaxy were being ripped apart. Zeros's face twisted in confusion, his hand trembling as he glanced around the room. "What is that? Who is coming?" The woman in the veil turned toward him, her face paling. "The ones who control the cure. The ones who were here long before the Empire." Suddenly, the walls around them cracked, and the entire fortress seemed to groan under the weight of some unimaginable force. The ceiling above them split open, revealing a swirling vortex of dark energy. From the depths of this void, a shadowy figure emerged. A towering silhouette, impossibly large and inhuman, its form shifting with an eerie fluidity. Vargas's heart pounded as he stared at the entity. The thing that had been hidden for so long. The ancient presence that had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. The real power, the woman said, her voice barely a whisper. It was never meant for us to control. It was always meant for them. And now, they've come to claim what is theirs. The dark figure's glowing eyes locked onto Vargas, and in that moment, he realized the terrifying truth. The Empire had never been the true threat. The true power was something far older, far more dangerous, and it had come for him. Zeros's voice cracked as he turned to the woman. What do we do? How do we stop them? But the woman only shook her head, her gaze fixed on the figure. There is nothing we can do. The galaxy is already doomed. Vargas's mind raced as the shadowed entity began to step forward, its massive form engulfing the room in darkness. His blood thrummed in his veins, the power inside him growing stronger by the second. He had a choice now, a choice that could change everything. To be continued. In that final moment, as the galaxy trembled and the ancient powers made their move, Vargas knew one thing for certain. The Empire was just the beginning of a far greater conflict, and the power that flowed through his veins might be the only thing capable of stopping it, or setting the galaxy on a path toward utter destruction.